man, I'm telling you, we are so excited about the efforts that we're putting forth, the things that are getting done. It is a slow and a long process, but, man, we are seeing some great and encouraging things happening with our people and across the state, actually. We're doing all kinds of new meetings, and you covered it a week or so ago, the Kilt Walk in Fayetteville, open carry Kilt Walk, which I'm going to be honest with you, I just get hysterical every time I think about that. That is so awesome that we have the right to not only open carry, but to promote the heritage behind the kilts. And, again, I don't know that I could wear one. That's not my heritage.
Well, you'd be appropriating somebody else's culture. The left would have a meltdown. You can't appropriate culture.
Absolutely. I got in a discussion about that, because somebody on our page, on our main page, said, "Well, I just don't believe that's what POA 746 is about." Well, I believe it is, because it's about our heritage and our rights. And I told that guy, I said, it'd be the same difference with me walking down the street, open carrying with a rebel flag.
Yeah,
I'm from the South. That's my heritage, And so, even though that stirs some things up in another aspect, of course, but man, we're having such a great time. It is awesome. I'm loving traveling across the state, meeting new people, and Paul, I'm just blown away that people really have bought into the narrative that the government knows best for us, and they are our friends, and they take care of us, and we should always obey what they say, even if it contradicts the laws. And I grew up that way, a good person is someone who never questions. Well, that's just not the American way.
That's true.
We were founded on people that were just tired of being bullied and being ruled by tyrants. And I want to be careful there, because I don't ever want to give the impression that we're a bunch of lunatics running around wanting to shoot somebody. That's just not what POA 746 is about at all. We're pastors, we're business owners, we're farmers, we're people that just love our country and love our rights. Mm-hmm. And, man, we're traveling across the state and having meetings. And down here in southeast Arkansas, it's a little harder because of the mindset, But we're definitely educating people and talking to people. We've got we had a meeting in Warren, Arkansas, just a few weeks ago, and decided to do an open carry walk, mm-hmm. because some of the officials. Let me rephrase that. We had heard that some of the officials said, "Well, there won't be no guns carried around here." Well, that's just not what was said. Senator Linda Collins Smith came down, visited with some of the officers, the Leos there in town, and everything was awesome. They even took pictures together. I mean, it was just amazing, an amazing time.
Good for her, Good for her using her platform to say, "Hey, this is credible. This is what the law says."
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you said the mindset, though. You said because of the mindset down here. What is that mindset? Is it the mindset that we find on the radical left that say that guns kill people? It's not the evil heart of man that is acting to kill somebody.
Yes, I'm afraid that there's a whole generation that has grown up. When I was in high school, it was very hard to find a pickup in the parking lot of the high school that didn't have a shotgun or a 22 in the rack in the back window, because we would go hunting, either on the way to school or after school. But that's not the generation we live in now, and because of social media and movies and all the nonsense, guns have been portrayed as evil, and only evil people have them. And boy, that couldn't be further from the truth, Paul. And of course, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but if we're not careful, what we do is we any rights that we have that are regulated are soon to be taken away.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Good morning, good morning, good morning. We got a great show lined up for you. Thanks so much for being with us. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine here. We want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call us or text 870-275-9799. Also, over at Facebook.com/Conduit News or the YouTube page, Conduit News YouTube, go to the page, subscribe, and click the little bell to receive notifications. Yeah, so coming up on the show, we covered this story briefly. So coming up at 7 o'clock this morning, we're going to be going over a lawsuit that's been filed against the government because apparently, for what I can tell, it's the medical industry. They're upset at these midwives. That's right. If you want to have a home birth, there are these new regulations because the medical community just can't stand the fact that somebody might be able to deliver a baby without their expertise, without a 4-year medical school degree. And so they're now trying to put these ridiculous expectations on mothers who want to use the home birth or do the home birth when use a midwife instead. So they're going to regulate midwives. And there's a lawsuit that's been filed to seek to lift the midwife restrictions in the state. Violation of, quote, bodily integrity is alleged. 5 women want a judge to stop the state from enforcing a regulation barring licensed lay midwives from delivering babies for women who have not undergone a pair of assessments meant to determine whether they can safely give birth at home. So, this story we've been following for a while. So Conduit News reached out to the attorney in this case. Her name is Keisha Chiapinelli, and she will be on the program coming up at 7:05. We're going to talk a little bit about this case and what she thinks it means, what the motivations behind it. Then, of course, at 7:33, we'll be talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan. He'll be calling in, I believe, from Little Rock. We're going to be discussing a bunch of stuff with State Representative Dan Sullivan this morning at 7:33. All right, so let's start with some national news. So Kanye West is doing his Kanye best, as I can hear Joe say from the other room. Kanye West, of course, comes out. Now, he did this. He's done this once before where, and it was really strange. He came out and made some positive comments about Trump well before the recent media blitz on him, and then he was hospitalized after that. And I thought that was extremely weird. Excuse me. I thought that was weird because it just didn't set right with me about that. It's almost like Kanye, what are you doing? You're throwing your let's just say that you misspoke and you're crazy and we had to put you in the hospital. But now you're all better now. But then all of a sudden he's not. He gives this speech on SNL a couple of weeks ago saying that the welfare system was a Democrat plot to separate and divide the African-American family. I mean, pretty incredible stuff here. And, of course, we have black approval rating of President Trump's job. It's gone from 15% all the way up to like 29-30%, according to one poll. This would be devastating for the Democrat Party if there wasn't a single aligned racial motivation for voting. What I mean by that, if there wasn't this monolith of because your skin color is this, you need to vote for a certain candidate. If it was more, hey, you know what, here's the information, here's the facts, make up your own mind. How do you think society should work? How do you think America should work? And, you compete in the arena of ideas. I think that can be very devastating. It's the left that wants to separate us into groups. It's the left that wants to divide us, black, white, old, young, rich, poor. Now, of course, it's male versus female, if you can even use the term male versus female, or I guess it's the people who are it's now people who are sure what gender they are versus people who believe that there are more than two genders. It's all about dividing people up into groups now. Well, this has made the fact that Kanye West is breaking the group mold, the fact that he is outside of what the Hollywood says he should be and everything else, they are now pouring on, which led African-American anchor Don Lemon to host a segment where they, had a couple of guests on, and this is what they said about Kanye West. Now, imagine if the tables were turned here, but this is what they said about Kanye West. Listen to this.
This is what happens when Negroes don't read. And we have this now, and now Donald Trump is going to use it and pervert it, and he's going to have somebody who can stand with him and take pictures.
Just looking at Scott.
Don Lemon just laughs.
Listen,
here.
black folks are about to trade Kanye West in the racial draft, okay? They've had it with him, and he's an attention whore like the president. He's all of a sudden now the model spokesperson. He's the token Negro of the Trump administration. This is ridiculous, and no one should be taking Kanye West seriously. He's clearly has issues. He's already been hospitalized.
Stop. All right. So he's been. Now they're blaming the hospitalization, saying he's mentally ill. But this is what happens. You're Kanye West. You use your platform. You use your platform to speak out what your opinion is, and then. Okay, what does CNN do? Okay, let's go get some other black people to speak on behalf of all, quote, black folks, right? What does she say? She says, black folks are about to trade him in the racial draft. The racial draft? Really? I'm so sick of focusing on things that divide us, and I'm so sick when people, listen, there's a reason why the Democrat, there's an anti-Democrat walk-away movement that is a real thing. It is a real phenomenon. And it's segments like that on CNN that are trying to keep everybody in line. Whoa. We've got to do something here. We got to get in front of this. We got to make sure that people know that Kanye West is mentally ill. I think the left is once again projecting. What do you think? Do you think that they're maybe projecting? I mean, it's the left, in my opinion, that has gone completely crazy since the election of Donald Trump. Remember this lady? Remember this lady on YouTube? Go ahead and play this clip. This is the left. They see nothing but rage and red since 2016.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald.
This is stop. Okay, stop. I can't take it. That is who, for those of you watching the video, that's who the left is now, okay? That's what they're doing. It's rage. Now, what this clip is not showing you is that the emotion, see, the reason it's okay for me to laugh at her is because there's another clip that shows this lady completely calm, right? And then she sees the camera that's out of the corner of her eye. She sees it, and that's when she then decides to, I don't know, try to win an Academy Award. So she does a pretty good job, right? But it's not real. But the left is, that's what the left's doing right now, I mean, it's just crazy. It's just absolutely nuts. So anyway, we also have some other national news. Obviously, the Hurricane Michael, I understand, doing quite a bit of damage down there to the center of the Florida Panhandle. So I would just encourage you guys to be praying for our fellow countrymen in Florida. And number two, you had a huge stock market correction yesterday. 834 point drop. And this has a lot of people worried. Now, a couple of things have happened with this. A lot of people are saying, hey, listen, this is a correction that was long overdue, right? A lot of people have also said, I heard even the mainstream media saying, well, some of this has to do with more populist movements across the globe, and now we're factoring in that the cost of doing business, meaning when you're more populist right now, the populist sentiment across the globe is to be more nationalistic and to be more constrained, if you will, which I actually think is a good thing. I think borders are, a good thing, and I think having different countries is a good thing. So what is that populist sentiment? Then I guess you would call that an anti-globalist sentiment, to where, you let the people of the country govern themselves, or you at least attempt to. Of course, then you have President Trump, who says, listen, a lot of this correction, needed to happen. A lot of people were saying it was going to, but you also have the Federal Reserve that's acting crazy, or did he say acting loco? So I think there's going to be a showdown here. This is kind of a telegraph. President Trump maybe wanting to take control of the Fed in more of a hands-on way. Now, what are they going to say? The mainstream media. Cue the mainstream media. No president's ever done this. No president's ever done this. The Fed is supposed to be removed from politics. The Federal Reserve is not supposed to be political. It's not. Democrats and Republican presidents in the past, they don't make the Federal Reserve political. And Donald Trump is. Well, guess what? In case you haven't noticed, President Trump isn't like any other president, okay? He's not. He's just not. So, no, if he does try to reform the Federal Reserve, or I don't know, maybe even audit the Fed. Ron Paul wanted to do that for years, and I'm sure his son Rand would get on board with it if we were to even audit the Federal Reserve, right? But they've always resisted that, and that's because the Federal Reserve is not a government agency. It's private. A lot of people don't know that. Well, a lot of people listening to this program probably do. Okay, we're going to reset here, take a break. We're going to get into some more headlines. Folks, we are going to tackle this hour China. That's right. We're gonna focus again on China here in just a second. Coming up probably 6:33ish. And you are not going to want to miss it, or don't miss it. It'll sound great on the radio, but it'll be even better if you go to our YouTube page, Conduit News, and watch the mashup montage that we have on China. We're going to be back in just a moment.
And it's almost paradoxical, but one of the greatest sayings that's ever been said was that only way to stop a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. And it has nothing to do with the tool. And as I think me and you spoke one other time, the first mass killing in the Old Testament was in Genesis, and it was with a rock. Cain killed Abel with a rock, and a fourth of the population was taken out. Mm-hmm. So it had nothing to do with the tool. There are just as many people that could be killed with a knife or a box cutter. Well, what are we going to do? We can't start regulating the box cutter.
Yeah. Well, and the other, so the reason the left is against this idea of arming people having the right to bear arms, or people having semi-automatic weapons, is because of public safety. I mean, that's what they say, right?
Yeah, now, that's what they say.
Now, that's what they say. Now,
in Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Yeah, so there is a new Project Veritas video that is now out. And it is... Okay, so the reason I'm going to cover this real quick, first of all, is because, we're in Arkansas, and to our east we have Tennessee. Tennessee's got a pretty big race going. I mean, I think everybody knows that Marsha Blackburn is going to be the next senator from Tennessee. Of course, Bob Corker. He's not coming back. He's out. So Marsha Blackburn's probably going to be the next senator from Tennessee, but we got to make sure of that. The last CBS poll had Marsha Blackburn up over this guy, this Democrat Phil Bredesen, by 8 points. That's not nearly enough for me. I don't know about you. So, of course, he's doing so poorly, and over the last 2-3 weeks, you've had the Kavanaugh situation that has just been completely ridiculous, and you have the Democrats overplaying their hand. You have the mob. You have them doing the best that they can in an attempt to basically stop Kavanaugh from getting on the court, because it's going to be an end to their progressive victories, their progressive legislative from the bench, because they're not going to be able to get anything done legislatively for the most part. And then, of course, we talked about how it was about Roe versus Wade. Before they accused Kavanaugh of being a gang rapist, okay, they were essentially opposing his nomination. You go look at Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood was opposing his nomination because they were trying to protect Roe versus Wade and the right to kill babies. That's what this was about. And so in an effort to prevent it, and I still believe this, in an effort to prevent this, what do? Well, you are a gang rapist, and you don't believe women. This all coming from the organization Planned Parenthood and the radical leftist Democrats that believe abortion should be used for birth control. Anybody see any projection and deflection there? You don't care about women. Aren't you projecting the very thing that you are guilty of onto the other side? Because the fact of the matter is, there are sex-selective abortions that go on all the time in this country, where people want a boy, they don't get a boy. It happens. The statistics in New York are they'll make you nauseous, especially when you start to look at it based on race. Yeah, so that's what it was about. Anyway, that all was going on, and then you got Democrat Phil Bredesen, Bredesen in Tennessee, and this guy is thinking, oh my goodness, I'm in Tennessee. This is going to hurt me. So what does Phil Bredesen do? He comes out and he says that, you know what, if I were senator, if I beat Marsha Blackburn and I were senator, I would be voting for Kavanaugh. I'd vote to confirm Kavanaugh. I'd be just like Joe Manchin. I'd be a Democrat voting to confirm Kavanaugh. Okay, all right, that's fine. Well, there's one little problem. We have somebody by the name of James O'Keefe, of Project Veritas, who went into one of Breseden's campaign offices in Nashville and decided to ask some questions. So, Bredesen campaign field organizer Maria Amhala was captured on video by a female journalist sent undercover into the Bredesen campaign's Nashville offices, describing Bredesen's statement on Friday as a political move that was necessary because he's trying to make up points. The undercover journalist told another person identified in the Project Veritas video as Will Stewart, Phil Bredesen campaign, quote, I was so confused because I just can't believe he would actually vote yes to confirm Kavanaugh. Quote, he wouldn't. He was just saying he would, Stewart said in a response. Another exchange between the undercover journalist and a person identified as James Miller, voter protection Bredesen campaign was equally illuminating. Quote, because, Phil Bredesen, wouldn't really vote to confirm Kavanaugh, right? The journalist asked Miller. I don't think so. I think it's not reassuring, but it's something that I think gives me the feeling that is of reassurance, because it's certainly not reassuring. I think much like Doug Jones or somebody, Miller answered. Who did you say? The journalist asked. Doug Jones of Alabama. That guy didn't vote for him, Kavanaugh. Phil Bredesen's not going to vote for him. The only reason Joe Manchin did is he's running right now, Miller said. The dialogue continued. Now, isn't that interesting? You have the Alabama senator, the senator from Alabama that beat Roy Moore, right, narrowly, because of, he didn't vote. He wasn't. Where was that guy, by the way? Wasn't he supposed to be some conservative Democrat? Yeah, conservative Democrat. Right. That guy didn't vote for him. Well, that's probably because of the Roy Moore situation. Right? The whole thing was, we got to believe women, regardless of the evidence or lack thereof. Anyway, Project Veritas strikes again. Man, they've been doing some great stuff. They had a whole deep state expose. Did you see that? Where they, 4 federal government employees ended up getting fired because of it, because they were secretly working for the Democrat Socialists of America on taxpayer dime, on the, while they're on the clock, and then of course they're using their connections within the deep state to sabotage the Trump administration, sabotage really everything that he's trying to do. Let me see here. What else do we have? We got some folks on Facebook. A lot of people know about the Federal Reserve. I mentioned the Fed one time that we should audit it, and everybody's audit the Fed. The Fed is a banking cartel. Yeah, it really is. I would agree with that. Hey, did you hear that? Hang on a second. State of Arkansas revenue has jumped $47.8 million in September. Joe, go ahead and show them this one. It was an increase that exceeded the forecast for the month by $15.2 million. Wow. Must be nice, right? Michael Wickline writing that rising individual income tax collections helped fuel $47.8 million increase in state general revenue in September, compared with the same month a year ago, to a record of $634.7 million for the month. Wow. That must be nice. Hey, you know what? But they're still going to have trouble passing. My prediction is they're still going to have trouble passing the tax cuts that the task force has recommended. Now, don't get me wrong. The recommendations from the task force, from what we can tell, are recommending a net reduction in revenue. Less money going to the government, which is exactly what a tax cut really is. That would be a great thing. More money would be in the private sector, less money would be going to government. It's like a $200 million cut in revenue to the government. That's the recommendation, but that's a long way from actually getting passed, because, you had State Representative Lane Jean quoted in the newspaper saying, I don't know how we can actually do this. I'm paraphrasing him, but he's essentially saying, look, we don't know what the cost of Medicaid is going to be. Of course, Medicaid expansion is a welfare program for able-to-work adults, which was a stark admission that maybe all of this was for nothing. Maybe all of this really was to get, conservative legislation or, tax cut legislation that they tried to run. Some Republicans tried to run, but they pulled it down in favor of the task force. Oh, I'm sorry. When I say task force, apparently it really makes everybody mad. And what they don't understand is if it ends up being a successful venture, then that's fantastic then. I would love that. That would mean the size of government would have gotten smaller. And I would love to eat that plate of crow. Folks, we're going to take another break and be back here in just a minute. Get another cup of coffee, and good morning to you. I can take their argument, and I can just show them the footage of the Salt Bowl false alarm with all of the people running for cover unarmed, and that's how the government actually sees us. They see us as sheep, I saw a meme the other day on Twitter, and it was a bunch of sheep, and it was looking straight at the camera lens, and it was like, after Kavanaugh, we're just waiting for what to be outraged at next. Basically, they're waiting on the media to tell them. This is what it said. Anyway, that the government sees us as these sheep, and they would rather have you cowering in War Memorial Stadium or running for your life or taking, like that father did, just like, here we go, sweetie, takes his girl by the hand and just starts to try to get towards the exit because they think there's a shooting going on. That's how the government would rather you be than be able to have a gun to protect yourself out in public. And that is radically offensive to me. But that aside, John Calvin, what I would like to talk about as far as guns go is the reason why our founding fathers, the main reason, was because they had just defeated the most powerful military force in the world at the time, the Redcoats, Great Britain, who were oppressive, who didn't want them to have guns. And they understood that they were this close, that the American government was this close. The newly formed American government could flip in an instant. It could flip in a day, and they would need to secure their liberties again because they understood that a government, that a powerful government can suppress the people. And, when you say that today, and I think that's the main argument. But when you say that today, people have so much faith and confidence. Oh, America would never do that because America never has done that, which is not necessarily true if you look through our history. But yeah, talk about that. That's the main reason why our right to human defense is so important.
Well, and again, Paul, I think, and this is a much deeper discussion, that through our educational system, we have been duped into believing that, again, our government is for us, and they know what's best for us. Ronald Reagan, I real regularly go to his statement of when we feel like a far and distant government can rule our lives better and know what's better for us than we do, then we're a nation that's already in trouble. And I believe that with all my heart. Because nobody knows how to protect my family better than I do. Back to your statement, I'm afraid that we have been indoctrinized to believe that the government, that the welfare.
A federal district court judge on Wednesday ruled that President Trump cannot block people from viewing his Twitter feed.
Harrell.
Trump's Twitter account @RealDonaldTrump is a designated public forum and protected by the First.
All right, folks, welcome back. Okay, all right, so it really is in the headlines daily. This is a headline. Joe, you don't have this, so don't worry about it because we're not going to need it for long. But just saw this. Chinese man has been brought to the United States to face economic spy charges. The government Chinese government spy, was in Belgium. He's now been transported to the United States to face prosecution. The guy's name is Zanjun Zhu. A senior officer with the Ministry of State Security is accused of seeking, to steal trade secrets from leading defense aviation firms, according to the Justice Department. Current and former officials said this is believed to be the first time a Chinese government spy has been brought to the United States to face charges. Now, I understand that Governor Asa Hutchinson is got campaign commercials out there for his reelection where he is bragging about traveling to Beijing to try to basically sell Arkansas to. He's a pretty good real estate agent. He's trying to sell Arkansas to the communist Chinese because they'll promise us jobs. They promise us jobs, and so we'll give them our resources. We'll basically say, everything's fine because I guess we're that desperate. We can't make Arkansas competitive, and get actual American companies to move here. We need the communist Chinese, It's like, well, why would communist China, a developing country, under the rules of the World Trade Organization, why do they have millions and millions, if not $1 billion, to just invest in a foreign country? That doesn't make any sense unless, ladies and gentlemen, hear me, unless they have other motivations. And if those motivations are essentially to conquer economically the United States, to steal our technology, to, pump themselves up back home, this should be an outrage to every Arkansan, whether you're on the left or the right. Well, if you're on the left, you may think communism's fantastic. Then of course maybe you'd love it, but it just is. It flies in the face of logic. It flies in the face of what Donald Trump is obviously trying to do. So with that being said, I put together a little montage. I think if Governor, listen, it is what it is. Asa likely is going to be the governor for the next 4 years. It is what it is. But if he's gonna go out and he's gonna and he said it the other day. He said these jobs with Beijing are frozen in the pipeline. But we're still working on it. The Arkansas Economic Development Commission, your taxpayer dollars, they're still reaching out to China every day trying to make these deals happen. What that means is the Arkansas Economic Development Commission is working against President Donald Trump. That's what that means. It's an outrage. And but so if the governor is going to go around bragging about his trips to Beijing as a reason for you to vote for him, if that's what he's going to do, then then at least we need to set the record straight. And let's present the contrast between what Vice President Mike Pence said at the Hudson Institute last week versus what Asa has said the last several years. Joe, whenever you're ready, take it away.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So, Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches, Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself, and I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. We need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them, and they're going to help you. Guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
All right, so we're going to come back to my camera here. That was Vice President Mike Pence, his speech that he gave at the Hudson Institute, I think last week or the week prior, where he called out China for exactly what they're doing. It was such a comprehensive speech. It's about 44 minutes long. As I was listening to it, I couldn't help but think to myself how many press conferences our governor has had with Chinese officials, not just the chairman of these so-called, companies. They're really just communist fronts. But he even brought the secretary from the Shandong province here in one of those clips. He's been to Beijing. He's done all of this. And from my standpoint, I'm just pointing out that I don't see how any of this makes any sense when we are in a trade war with China. I don't see, and I know everything's on hold right now because of the trade war. But I just feel like now going around campaigning saying that I've been to Beijing and that's why you need to reelect me governor. I think, well, is that really true? And what does that mean? What implications are there when you have a governor of any state that is trying to bring communist Chinese companies here in our country, where they are going to use our resources and get rich and send the profits back home? And you know what? It doesn't even have to be a profitable endeavor, by the way. This could all be subsidies because they're here to steal our intellectual property. They have a 100-year plan. It's not they're willing to lose money on this. They're willing to do whatever they need to do to get a foothold in the United States. And we have a governor, and I'm sure, look, and don't think that the Clintons didn't start this whole thing, and because of course they did, and don't think it's not a very familiar thing for the Chinese and what they know about Arkansas, in terms of the size of our government, the mentality of our officials, the fact that corruption here in Arkansas has always been pretty well tolerated to some extent. Oh yeah, people get pinched here and there and go to jail, but hey, It is our system of bureaucracy that almost put two Clintons, that began the path, that almost put two Clintons in the White House, but did for sure begin the path and put one Clinton in the White House. Anyway, it's just, when it comes to this stuff, folks, I just think we need to have an honest look. We need to ask ourselves, look, I disagree with giving subsidies to any businesses. Arkansas, Clark County, St. Francis County, going to give these Chinese companies tax breaks and that sort of thing. Listen, I disagree with any type of incentive like that, because I would rather you treat all businesses the same. But listen, I know I'm kind of in the wind on that. I'm in the I'm all alone on that for the most part, because every state in the country does this. Every local government in the country does something like this. But why China? My question is, why China? Why bring Chinese companies over here when they're doing what they're doing to Christians? Not just Christians, but you heard him say Buddhists and Muslims as well, burning Bibles, burning Bibles, tearing down crosses, getting rid of these underground churches. Why would we want to do that, right? Why would we want to do that? That's the question that I have. And I think it needs an answer. You're not going to hear it on the campaign trail, but you will hear at least the question being asked here on, Conduit News, because it is, Reggie. So Reggie on Facebook writes, please put that on YouTube. Yes, we will. We're going to put it on YouTube. I have a few more changes I think I want to make. I just made this yesterday. It took me a very long time to make that video yesterday, you can imagine. But we will put it on YouTube. But I would love to ask our listening audience, what do you think the title should be? I'm dead serious. I would love to hear from you. I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to pick an audience title because, but what do you think the title of that video, if we put it on YouTube, what should it be? What would you title it if it were you? Feel free. You can text 870-275-9799. You can also just sound off here on Facebook.com/Conduit News or the YouTube channel and let us know, what do you think our Asa Hutchinson, China, Beijing / Vice President Mike Pence montage should be titled? It shouldn't be that. That's too long, what I just said. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
System, these things are made to take care of us to the point until we have literally became, as you said earlier, sheep. My problem with that is that if you read history and you study history, then you understand was most definitely a time in our history, as far as America, that people had to stand up. I've seen that on Facebook. I'm sure you have too. The little meme that says, "By this, if our forefathers had been here today, they would already be shooting." And that's literally the reason we have become where we are now, because somebody stood up and said, "Hey, enough is enough. We can't take anymore." It's, again, I don't want to make that sound radical, because that's not what POA 746 is about. We're not radicals. And I've said this to you before. It's not about trying to overthrow the government. It's trying to make sure the government doesn't overthrow us. Mm-hmm. And you know, as far as
the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us. We got a few news stories to get to. Up in Northwest Arkansas, you got a Republican and Don Clements running against Democrat Greg Leding. Okay, and Democrat Greg, it's an open seat, but you know Fayetteville's a pretty blue area. But I will just tell you this. They were talking about guns the other night. They had a debate. They're talking about a red flag law. Stirred up a lot of stuff. According to reports, Doug Thompson writes that the gun debate fires up the forum. Of course, Greg Leding is the guy in Fayetteville. He's the state representative who is, you know, trying to sponsor and push this red flag legislation that would essentially rob you of your Second Amendment rights. So, you know, if there's anybody up there, anybody up there listening, or you know people up in Fayetteville, I would just encourage you to, sometimes there's Democrats that believe the Second Amendment is, just basically untouchable. Don't do anything to my Second Amendment, you know. And so the choice is pretty clear. If you are for the Second Amendment, then the Democrat Greg Leding would not be your choice, I would imagine. If you're against the Second Amendment, then Democrat Greg Leding would be your choice, I would imagine. Also, you got State Senator Jason Rapert is being sued because of blocking people on social media. Now, the reason this is happening is because a federal district judge back in May of this year ruled that President Donald Trump cannot block people from viewing his Twitter feed over their political views. It was a ruling by Judge Naomi Rentz Buchwald of U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York said that President Trump's Twitter account is a public forum, and blocking people who reply to his tweets with differing opinions constitutes viewpoint discrimination, which violates the First Amendment. So Jason Rapert is being sued now because he's blocked people on Twitter or social media. Let's see here. 2 lawyers in the office, Solicitor General Nicholas Brony and Assistant Solicitor General Dylan Jacobs, filed notices Thursday to appear on behalf of Rapert in the U.S. District Court of the Eastern District of Arkansas. So that means that the Attorney General, the state of Arkansas, is now going to be aiding Jason Rapert in this lawsuit. Now, this has divided some of you out there. A lot of people say, why is Jason Rapert getting to use, legal counsel from the state? And then people are outraged by this. Then you have other people who are saying, well, hang on a second. He's being sued because he is a public official or an employee of the state of Arkansas, technically. And that's why the state of Arkansas would get involved and defend his right to block someone on social media. At the very least, though, this is very odd, and it's certainly interesting to see where we go from here. Of course, the plaintiffs said they're atheists. Anyway, we'll be back in a minute.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
In the world at the time, the Redcoats, Great Britain, who were oppressive, who didn't want them to have guns, and they understood that they were this close, that the American government was this close. The newly formed American government could flip in an instant. It could flip in a day, and they would need to secure their liberties again because they understood that a government, that a powerful government can suppress the people. And, when you say that today, and I think that's the main argument, but when you say that today, people have so much faith and confidence. Oh, America would never do that because America never has done that, which is not necessarily true if you look through our history. But yeah, talk about that. That's the main reason why our right to human defense is so important.
Well, and again, Paul, I think, and this is a much deeper discussion, that through our educational system, we have been duped into believing that, again, our government is for us, and they know what's best for us. Ronald Reagan, I real regularly go to his statement of when we feel like a far and distant government can rule our lives better and know what's better for us than we do, and we're a nation that's already in trouble. And I believe that with all my heart. Because nobody knows how to protect my family better than I do. Back to your statement, I'm afraid that we have been indoctrinized to believe that the government, that the welfare system, these things are made to take care of us to the point until we have literally became, as you said earlier, sheep. My problem with that is that if you read history and you study history, then you understand there was most definitely a time in our history, as far as America, that people had to stand up. I've seen that on Facebook, I'm sure you have too, the little meme that says, by this, if our forefathers had been here today, they would already be shooting. And that's literally the reason we have become where we are now, because somebody stood up and said, hey, enough is enough. We can't take anymore. Again, I don't want to make that sound radical, because that's not what POA 746 is about. We're not radicals. And I've said this to you before. It's not about trying to overthrow the government. It's trying to make sure the government doesn't overthrow us. And as far as assault weapons, and that's a real crazy term anyway, assault weapons. But when America was founded, the American patriots had the same kind of equipment, same kind of military weapons that the government did. And I think that's always the way it should be. I had somebody ask me the other day, what about these AR-15s? I mean, who hunts with the AR-15? Well, I've got a lot of friends that do that.
Me too. I have one that hunts with one.
Oh, absolutely. I've got several friends that do, and they're good for that. But, when we founded, when America was founded, they weren't worried about the deer uprising. They weren't worried about the wild animals.
Are you sure they weren't worried about the deer uprising? I mean, come on, they're trespassers. They're on your land. They
and they have horns.
They've got horns. They eat your resources, and then they they defecate all through your woods. That's your property.
Absolutely.
They weren't worried about an uprising of deer then.
Right, exactly. They were, and in particular, even to this day, we should be able to defend ourselves against anybody or any tyrannical people or any tyrannical government that tries to take away our rights. And again, not trying to be radical, that has nothing to do with it, but it is my God-given right to be able to defend myself, defend my property, and defend my family. And if we're not careful, what we do is we're our own worst enemies at times, because we want to trust people that can't be trusted. And that's just a simple fact of it. If there was no worries about somebody breaking in my house, well, then I would not need a gun. But as we've seen since Genesis, that human nature, the Adamic nature, is always going to be to have to worry about other people.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think we should have to walk around in fear. But you know what? I had a guy ask me. I carry.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is hour number 2. Good morning to everybody out there listening. We really appreciate it. We're building a Liberty machine here. We want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call or text 870-275-9799. Sound off over on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News. We are tabulating or recording, I guess, your suggestions for the name of that YouTube video that we played in the first hour, which was a montage mashup of what Vice President Mike Pence said about China versus all of the potential Chinese deals and all the trips that the governor's taken to China, and we're kind of juxtaposing the two, and it's quite an interesting video. Before we put it up on YouTube for you guys to share, we want to know what you think it should be titled, and so feel free to sound off on that. Folks, there is a story by Andy Davis that was written back on the 6th, and it details that a lawsuit that has been filed. 5 women want a judge to stop the state from enforcing a regulation barring licensed lay midwives from delivering babies for women who have not undergone a pair of assessments meant to determine whether they can safely give birth at home. A pair of assessments, or otherwise known as regulations. The attorney in this case, her name is Keisha Chiapinelli, and she joins us now via phone. Keisha, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, Keisha, so tell us a little bit about, just generally, what's this all about? Your clients feel like they shouldn't have to do these things in order to be able to have a baby the way they want to have a baby.
That's right. So it's really just over-regulation of the midwives, but it affects the consumers and women who hire a midwife. So you have to jump through all these hoops when you go out and hire the licensed midwife, and some of those hoops include going to your local health unit to have what are called risk assessments. And those risk assessments are performed by ADH clinicians. They're usually nurses. And there's absolutely no way to opt out of the risk assessments in their entirety. So it's basically compelled medical treatment.
Compelled medical treatment.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And aren't midwives right now already subject to licensing in some degree?
Oh, yeah, they are, and they have been since 1983, I believe, and then the program was expanded statewide with the purpose of serving all communities, not just the poorest communities, which was the case at its inception. So we've had licensure of midwives in this state for quite a while. We were one of the first states to do it, and they're not lay midwives anymore. They all have the credential of CPM or certified professional midwife, and so the title of this is a bit misleading as well, but the Department of Health continues to call them lay midwives.
So in a lawsuit filed Thursday, Pulaski County Court, the women also want Judge Chris Piazza to lift a restriction prohibiting midwives from delivering babies for women who have previously given birth via cesarean section.
Yes.
So tell us about that provision.
Yeah, so women in the state who have had a C-section are completely banned from hiring a licensed midwife ever. It does not matter what their current health status is. It doesn't matter what type of incision or suturing was done in the previous cesarean section. None of that matters. They absolutely cannot hire a licensed midwife. And I can't think of any other class of people who are just forbidden from going and having a conversation with a provider. Now, sure, lots of providers are not in a position to take on specific clients, but the client and the provider have an opportunity to have a discussion about that, and a decision is made. But women here who have had cesareans don't get that opportunity. And it affects a large number of women because about a third of women are having babies via cesarean. And Arkansas, our statistics are about the same. And if you've had a cesarean in Arkansas, you're likely going to have a repeat cesarean because the hospitals have what are called VBAC bans. Vaginal birth after cesarean is the acronym. So they will not support a woman in her decision to attempt to have a baby vaginally. They push for the elective cesarean that's scheduled. And midwives, we believe, would support women who want to have a baby another way without another surgery, but they're not given the opportunity.
Wow. Okay, so there's a ton of questions I have.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing is, okay, I'm assuming that the state is going to say, well, that's because it's unsafe. If you've had a cesarean before, it'd be unsafe to have a vaginal delivery at that point. Is that true?
It's not true. Well, I guess you could say it depends. That's the good lawyerly answer, right? So the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the National Institute of Health has come out with guidance that says women who have had a previous cesarean are good candidates to have what's called a trial of labor after cesarean. So in other words, yes, women who have had a cesarean need to try to have the vaginal birth for subsequent pregnancies, and that is safe. It's even reasonable to do or to attempt to do if mom has had 2 cesareans. Now, they don't talk about anybody above that number 2, but the problem with that is ACOG and National Institute of Health, they are not probably ever going to say vaginal birth after cesarean is safe at home, but they also operate from the medical model of care. And we're talking about the midwifery model of care. There's lots of overlap, and all of our border states allow this. Arkansas is the anomaly in the situation. So if you look to Texas, they're a good example. Moms can do it there.
Well, yeah, this is about really just giving. And if you, it's about freedom. It's about allowing somebody to deliver a baby the way they want to deliver it. Now, we're talking with Keisha Chiapinelli. She's an attorney representing her clients in this case, saying, hey, listen, we don't want these midwife regulations. We don't think or not midwife regulations, really, it's just we don't want to have to submit ourselves to inspection and let the state tell us whether or not we can, basically contract or use the midwives, for the ways we want to use the way we want to use a midwife. I got a feeling, though, Keisha, this comes down to dollars and cents.
Yes.
Right. So here's the thing. From what I can see, because I guess I have a 15-month-old daughter. She took her first steps 2 days ago, which was really exciting. But so we considered home birth. We did. We didn't go that route, but we considered it. And so in doing all this, I'm kind of familiar with this is a growing cultural phenomenon. And in that growing cultural phenomenon of women who want to do their births at home, that means less money going into the medical industry. Is that right?
Bingo. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So any service that the physicians at the Arkansas Department of Health can prevent their competitors from providing increases and helps their bottom line. So part of the problem here is we don't have an independent board of midwives who regulate themselves. They're regulated by the doctors and physicians at Arkansas Department of Health. Those physicians work from a completely different model of care, and they're essentially regulating midwifery away. When you regulate to this degree, you're going to see the profession dwindle, and we don't have many midwives here, and I don't see it getting better, especially anyone who's deciding that they want to become a midwife and considering that, they're probably going to go to Texas or to one of our border states where they can operate within their scope of practice with autonomy the way any other licensed provider would. These are licensed professionals. So the licensing mechanism is there to protect the public. Just let it work. You don't have to write 100 pages of rules for licensed midwives. I don't see that sort of scope and breadth and overregulation of any of the other professionals that the Department of Health regulates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have seen increasingly, just from the medical community, and we're actually going to be talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan coming up at the bottom of the hour. He's tried to expand scope of practice for APNs, and everybody fights it tooth and nail. You know, they don't want more choices out there is what it seems to me. And I would love to see the statistics, honestly, as to what is the reimbursement rate when a woman goes through a cesarean versus a vaginal birth, because I have a feeling that surgery is a lot more expensive. So if you've had one cesarean, well, of course, there's now a financial incentive. Let's not ignore it to have more cesareans because that's more money.
Well, absolutely. And it's also about just access to basic medical care. One of my plaintiffs is from Paragould, Arkansas. She had her babies previously via cesarean, probably was not necessary. And the two biggest OB practices or OB groups in Paragould recently dropped all Medicaid clients. And so there is actually a shortage of obstetricians in Paragould to care for the pregnant community. And a makeshift clinic was put together by St. Bernard's for these women. So now my client drives an hour round trip to a clinic, sees a different provider every single time, does not know who will actually deliver the baby, and it may happen in one of these hospitals, and there is no provider in those hospitals that will support a woman who wants to have a vaginal birth after cesarean. So the obstetricians are not there. There's a void. There's a dearth in the community of just good care for these women, and they can't use the licensed midwife who is there precisely for this purpose, to serve these communities.
You know, at some point, I first of all, thank you, Keisha, for representing these women, because this is really just a freedom issue. It is a choice issue. It is, really exposing the ridiculousness of regulation, how we can have these industries, that we're not supposed to touch, we're not supposed to mess with them, and then they're going to use the arms of government to basically make sure. Now they're also going to say, well, no, this is about public safety. Well, public safety is great, but also voluntary cooperation and freedom of choice is better. I would rather side on that side of the scale.
Yeah, and the safety part of it is interesting because what you do is you create a dangerous situation. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but if a woman wants to have a baby and she believes that she should have a licensed midwife, but the regulations stand in her way and she can't even have a conversation, what she's going to do is hire the unlicensed midwife or have the baby at home unassisted. And these things happen in Arkansas quite a bit. I think the agency would agree that that's unsafe. But that's what the regulation does. Or midwifery clients are very, very smart, contrary to what the Department of Health may think, and they will read the 100 pages of regulations, and they have a playbook of exactly what not to tell the midwife in order to continue care. So now you have a situation where mom is not transparent about her medical condition or things that have happened in the past in an effort to keep the licensed midwife. So this regulation is not safe.
Keisha Chiapinelli, I really appreciate you being on the program, and I'd love to have you on again soon. Keep us posted as this develops, and good luck in representing your clients.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right.
I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, Keisha, be safe. Folks, we're going to take a break. The number 870-275-9799. If you want to sound off about this or anything else, let me know. 870-275-9799. Force in the world at the time, the Redcoats, Great Britain, who were oppressive, who didn't want them to have guns. And they understood that they were this close, that the American government was this close. The newly formed American government could flip in an instant. It could flip in a day, and they would need to secure their liberties again because they understood that a government, that a powerful government can suppress the people. And, when you say that today, and I think that's the main argument, but when you say that today, people have so much faith and confidence. Oh, America would never do that because America never has done that, which is not necessarily true if you look through our history. But yeah, talk about that. That's the main reason why our right to human defense is so important.
Well, and again, Paul, I think, and this is a much deeper discussion, but through our educational system, we have been duped into believing that, again, our government is for us.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
That's a fascinating story, and it's going to continue to develop. The government should be out of our lives as much as possible. And what you see here with the medical community, I mean, the bottom line is, when I need a doctor, I want a doctor, right? Everybody would agree with that. If you're sick, you need a doctor, you want a doctor. But then it also comes to a point where, okay, the medical community, they have a lot of money changing hands. A lot of money. Did anybody see CVS Pharmacy is merging with Aetna? Can you imagine the horror? My goodness. And they're like, oh, well, it's going to be okay. They'll avoid monopoly status because they'll divest their Medicare Part D. Whatever. Good grief. CVS is going to continue. CVS Caremark will continue to put out, try to go after local pharmacists and get a corner on the market, price everybody out of business, and then when they have all the pharmacies, you won't even be able to afford drugs. There's too much intermingling between government and our healthcare system, and you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. That's the real problem here with everything that's going on. Specifically, I mean, this is a small case, or this is a small symptom of a much larger, disease with the midwife situation. You're going to tell mothers that they can't voluntarily get whoever they want to deliver your baby? I mean, that's messed up, man. Who do you think you are? Seriously, who do you think you are? And listen, there are. If you're somebody that's like, well, they just can't, then you're a totalitarian person. If you're in the medical community, I got news for you, and you are so afraid of freedom. And yeah, something bad could happen, but I could walk out and get hit by a bus right now. Okay, that doesn't mean I want to say, well, we can't have any buses on the road. Freedom of choice is better. And if you're in the medical community, quite honestly, and you think that midwives or you think these women should have to submit to physical inspection because they're just too stupid, they're just too dumb to realize the risks and blah, 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 blah. If that's what you think, well, I think that you're a totalitarian person, and I think that you're afraid of freedom. But I bet most of the physicians out there listening don't feel that way, that you're okay. You're okay with the possibility of maybe something bad happening. And if that's the case, then why is the medical community, or why are the profession, why are they doing this? Well, it's because of the money. Let me tell you something. Having home births, using midwives, doing whatever, it's a rising phenomenon. It is a cultural thing. People, you hear people say, listen, I don't know if I don't want to go to the hospital. I want to be calm. I want to be relaxed. I want to try to have natural birth now is a big thing. I don't want to have drugs, that sort of thing. And people are doing it. Guess what? Shocker, women are doing it. Shocker, sometimes women can have babies, and they don't need somebody who's been to school for 4 years to do it. Or, you know what I'm saying? Because it is very much a natural thing. People have been having babies long before there were 4-year medical schools. People have been having babies long before you went to school to be a nurse. So, yeah, I mean, it is a classic example. Government needs to get out of the way. But what do we have here? We have the medical community with all their PACs, with all their campaign contributions, using the regulatory arm that they have access to, essentially the government, essentially the force of law, because the government has the guns, to say, we need to Johnny sweep the legs. We need to Johnny sweep the legs, these midwives, because these home births that are going up statistically, more and more people are realizing they may not need us as much, and that is costing us money. That's costing us money. And this regulation is actually really, really specific, the one about cesareans. If you've had a cesarean section, you can't use a midwife. You've got to come to us. You must come to us if you can't, if you've had a cesarean. And really, there's a bottom dollar. I mean, cesareans are going to be more expensive. You're cutting, you're cutting somebody open. So, if you've had a cesarean, you got to have another cesarean. Well, it's going to be more money that way. I can't wait. We're going to be talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan here in just a moment. He's going to be calling in here at 7:33, so we'll get to more of this. Also, I want you to name that video. Somebody on Facebook says, Randy says, doesn't communist China control births? That would be correct. That would be correct, Randy. You are correct. We still want you guys to name this video that we played. Matter of fact, we're probably going to play it again next hour because it was so popular. I'm sorry, not next hour. We're going to play it again in the next half hour after we get done with State Representative Dan Sullivan. So we want you to title this or caption this video because we're going to put it on YouTube. It is basically a montage of Vice President Mike Pence detailing the dangers of China and what they're doing to this country, stealing our technology, that sort of thing. And it's juxtaposed with cuts of Asa meeting with communist Chinese officials, trying to sell Arkansas's resources, get them to move here, and not steal our intellectual property, though. That's not, it's going to be jobs, jobs, jobs. If you build it, they will come, and we will turn your fields of capitalism into fields of communism. Back in a moment.
And they know what's best for us. Ronald Reagan, I real regularly go to his statement of when we feel like a far and distant government can rule our lives better and know what's better for us than we do, then we're a nation that's already in trouble. And I believe that with all my heart, because nobody knows how to protect my family better than I do. Back to your statement, I'm afraid that we have been indoctrinized to believe that the government, that the welfare system, these things are made to take care of us to the point until we have literally became, as you said earlier, sheep. My problem with that is that if you read history and you study history, then you understand there was most definitely a time in our history, as far as America, that people had to stand up. I've seen that on Facebook. I'm sure you have too. The little meme that says, "By this, if our forefathers had been here today, they would already be shooting." And that's literally the reason we have become where we are now, because somebody stood up and said, "Hey, enough is enough. We can't take anymore." Again, I don't want to make that sound radical, because that's not what POA 746 is about. We're not radicals. And I've said this to you before. It's not about trying to overthrow the government. It's trying to make sure the government doesn't overthrow us. And you know, as far as assault weapons, and that's a real crazy term anyway, assault weapons. But when America was founded, the American patriots had the same kind of equipment, same kind of military weapons that the government did. And I think that's always the way it should be. You know, I had somebody ask me the other day, what about these AR-15s? I mean, who hunts with the AR-15? Well, you know, I've got a lot of friends that do that.
Me too. I have one that hunts with one.
Oh, absolutely. I've got several friends that do, and they're good for that. But you know, when we founded, when America was founded, they didn't worry. They weren't worried about the deer uprising. I mean, you know, they weren't worried about the wild animals.
Are you sure they weren't worried about the deer uprising? I mean, come on, they're trespassers. They're on your land. You know, they
and they have horns.
They've got horns. They eat your resources, and then they you know, they defecate all through your woods. That's your property.
Absolutely.
They weren't worried about an uprising of deer then.
Right, exactly. They were, you know, and in particular, even to this day, we should be able to defend ourselves against anybody or any tyrannical people or any tyrannical government that.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We got on the phone with us State Representative Dan Sullivan. Dan, welcome, sir. How you doing?
Well, good morning, Paul. I'm not in the studio today. I'm down here in Little Rock, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on. You know, I was listening to that last segment, and I was, of course, listening to the show, as I always do, last week, and you had the quote from Frederick Bastille. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Bastille or Bastillon.
Bastille?
Yeah.
Yeah, when it says, when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. Now, I met with that midwife board my first term a couple of years ago, and they just cannot understand why anybody would select freedom and choice over being regulated. It was a new thought to them.
Wow. Yeah, it certainly is, you know, a microcosm. I think if you can't let women decide, you know, who they want to have their own baby, and if you're afraid of women being able to choose where they have it, who delivers it, I mean, we've really gone down. I mean, we really are terrified of people having the freedom to just govern themselves and make their own decisions in life.
Well, and that's what I want to talk about today, and I've got a lot. I want to come back next week to talk about some more things that are going on. So you kind of, if I'm getting a little too quick or something you don't understand, jump in. But you know, the reason I wanted to come on today is just to talk about what big government is doing. And that, as you said earlier, that midwife process is just a microcosm of that. I am the chair on the Legislative Audit Committee. I'm the chair of the subcommittee for the audit of Medicaid. And we've had some findings come about here in the last couple of weeks. Been working on for over a month. And we have a meeting on this Friday at 9 a.m., Medicaid audit, that we're going to talk about and try to dig a little bit deeper because we still don't have all the answers. But I want to give just a short background to what we've been talking about and what you've been talking about the power of the medical lobby.
Yeah, let me stop you here. I want you to talk about that. Conduit for Commerce came out with a paper a couple of weeks ago, Follow the Money, and it really charted, who are the players in Little Rock, who are the kingmakers. Their PACs back this candidate, the candidates win, and the healthcare lobby was, a number one. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. My opponent was a doctor, Dr. Peck in Jonesboro. Dr. Peck outraised me over 2-to-1, over $100,000 in a little old house race in northeast Arkansas. Dr. Peck hired attorneys in D.C. and admitted this, hired attorneys in Washington, D.C. and in Little Rock to investigate me for the past 15 years. They didn't find anything. He also had a surrogate file an ethics complaint against me. I had to go to Little Rock twice. I had to consult with an attorney. Matter of fact, I was just cleared of that 5-0 after they heard the evidence. I was cleared of that 5-0, and it took about a minute for that to happen. Thank you, Ray Hackworth. But the tactics that they use in this, he sent out a mailer and that I was guilty of Medicaid fraud. And that mailer went out just a few days before the election, and I didn't have much time to refute that. Fortunately, the Attorney General and the Inspector General both submitted letters to me and to the Jonesboro Sun, our local paper, saying that was not true. So this medical society and the people that supported my opponent, not Dr. Peck, nor any of his supporters ever came and said, Dan, that was really a shame the way Dr. Peck ran that campaign. I had a number of voters come to me and tell me that they changed their vote over that. I've had a couple of voters come and say that they, unfortunately, had voted early, and they believed those things. So the medical lobby is, particularly, I think, our medical society, because most of the donations came from doctors. I mean, we had one of the leading doctors, several of the leading doctors in Jonesboro, doctors from UAMS, supporting this. And they are just shameless in the way they will go about trying to win at all costs.
Now, so the reason, we're talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan, the reason you had this big pushback, Dan, from the medical community backing your opponent and then finding a doctor to run against you is because you had tried to expand scope of practice for advanced practice nurses, correct?
Yeah, go figure. I worked on the scope of practice legislation for advanced practice nurses and for telehealth, and the medical society and the medical lobby has defeated it each time. And that's why, Dr. Peck hired or owned, however you want to use that, 20 APNs, advanced practice nurses, and his supporters were in that field. Matter of fact, Paul, there's some real breaking news on that. I can't go into it a whole lot right now because I want to get to this Medicaid audit, but I think we've got some changes coming in that. Again, I don't want to go into it. I'll get off on a sidetrack. I'm getting excited about all of this because I think we may finally move it down the road. But the medical lobby refuses even to negotiate on those issues. There's just no. And they have the money and the power to absolutely take you out, which they tried to do for me. I'm just really fortunate that I have a great campaign manager, my wife, who advises and consults with me, and we just know a lot of people, and the people in my district know that I represent them. I don't represent the administration in Little Rock. I don't represent the doctor lobby, the medical lobby. I represent the people of our district and fight for freedom, and I think that's why I won that race, 54-46, I think.
Talk a little bit about the stuff we've been hearing about how we have overpayment in the Arkansas Works program to insurance companies.
Yeah, sure. And, there are actually about 3 things we're going to talk about on Friday where we just don't understand what DHS is telling us. But, we run what's called a Paris match, which is like the city. It's a poverty index match. It's people on Medicaid who are on Arkansas Medicaid. We submit our list to the feds, and the feds then run a comparison to see what people get Medicaid in multiple states. So it's not just Arkansas Works, it's all Medicaid. And again, I'm trying to get more of the details. DHS in some cases has not been very forthcoming. So we want to dig into this a little bit deeper and find out exactly what's going on. That when you have the feds then send back who they have who are getting Medicaid in multiple states. So for example, in 2017, we found that there were 33 or 32,000 people getting Medicaid in multiple states in Arkansas. They sent those people, the names back to us. We investigated, DHS investigated. They found 7,000 valid and 25,000 over the course of a year who were not valid, and we removed them from the roll. Just so your listeners understand, we are paying all Medicaid for those multiple times. And in the case of Arkansas Works, we're actually paying the insurance company $600 a month. It's an estimate, about $600 a month every month that those people are on the roll. So then in some cases, not the entire 25,000, I don't think, but in some cases, we are paying that to the insurance company who are getting Medicaid in multiple states. So roll that forward to 2018. I had a whistleblower or anonymous caller who called me and told me where to look and what to do. Matter of fact, they're a listener to and a follower of Conduit News. I hope that person is listening today. But they told me and gave me some insight into where to look. So I started asking our Medicaid why we hadn't run this Paris match in first quarter and second quarter of 2018. And we finally ran it in August. So our numbers in 2017, we had 25,000 people that we removed from the roll. In 2018, we haven't removed anybody. So people who are on Arkansas Works, and we're paying $600 a month, and we're paying that to the insurance company, we can't go back and recoup it. So I found out yesterday that number in the Paris match, we just got the results back for third quarter of 2018, and it was over 18,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And my point is, Paul, I met for hours with our Medicaid people and people at DHS, and those are hardworking people doing the very best they can to match this. But when government gets so big and you're trying to manage over 1 million people for all these services, are you in prison? Are you out of prison? Are you making too much money? And people are churning on and off, and they're moving in the state, moving out of the state. It's almost impossible to track all of that and to keep up with it. So our people need to realize as government grows, and, for example, Arkansas Works, as government grows, our ability to track those people has a loss ratio that we just lose money because we can't possibly track all the things that are going on. Specifically, for example, you might have a child who lives with mom, and mom is getting the Medicaid on that child, and the child goes to live with dad in another city. Then they go to live with grandma in another state, and then they come back into Arkansas, and as that churn happens, it's almost impossible to track those people and people in that state for all the services, the multiple services that they get.
So in that case, you have in all these situations, you move. Let's say you move out of state, and you never come back. I mean, how long? And so you're talking about essentially we didn't run this to the third quarter, so for over 2 quarters, you have Blue Cross Blue Shield essentially getting $600 a month, and yet the person is not qualified, should not. The insurance company is essentially benefiting from fraud, and you're saying there's no way for us to say, hey, Blue Cross Blue Shield, you owe the state this much money because we paid it to you and we shouldn't have.
That's correct. That's part of Obamacare and Arkansas Works and private option. You cannot recoup that money. It goes out the door the first day of the month or the first week of the month or the quarter, and they don't get removed. I think I'm going to ask that question Friday. How quickly, when we find this information out, how quickly can we remove them? I mean, for example, we didn't run it till third quarter. I'm assuming we haven't investigated yet. So I'm assuming if we haven't found these people, we'll go ahead and pay third quarter for them too. So your people can multiply this conservatively, multiply $600 a month times, 10,000 people times 6 months.
Yeah.
That's conservative. That's a Joe can probably calculate.
Hey, Joe, do calculate. 10,000 people, 10,000 people times 600, okay, and then 600. So 10,000 people times $600 a month for 6 months. So then you want to multiply that number by 6 and get us a dollar figure on that. We're talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan times 6. He is calling from Little Rock. So tell us about this Medicaid. Tell us about the subcommittee meeting tomorrow that you're having. You're the chair of, and that's happening tomorrow on Friday.
Yeah, we're going to dig down into this report that we've gotten back, investigation, find out where they are in the investigation. We're going to find out how many, what this 18,000 represents, and how our state is at risk. The problem, and our Medicaid folks told us initially it was a glitch in the system. Of course, you know me, Paul, and I said, well, so what's a glitch? They said, well, it's just a glitch. We'll get fixed now. Well, as I dug down into the glitch, I found out that we had a transition in contractors. Northrop Grumman had the contract. Contract went to a different company, Deloitte. When Northrop Grumman had some problems in working with Deloitte, but it's still a responsibility of DHS. So when we run the report, we don't run the report correctly.
Yeah.
And so we can't blame that on anybody but ourselves. So even when we ran it incorrectly first quarter, you're thinking second quarter, this is a big deal, 25,000 people. So second quarter, let's really be on top of this. Well, apparently when we submitted it, we didn't do it again correctly. So we're wondering, one of the questions we'll have Friday is who's responsible for that? If we have contractors who are not fulfilling their obligations, and that risk to the state is, millions of dollars, then, who's responsible for that? Northrop Grumman, Deloitte, DHS? And, of course, Paul, you have to remember that in the case of Arkansas Works, the state budget is only 4% of that.
Yeah.
So if we lost, did Joe get the number yet?
$36 million.
Oh, well, we got that. I'll write you a check.
Yeah, it's no big deal. Hey, we are out of time. State Representative Dan Sullivan. Yeah, it's $36 million wasted. Keep us posted on what happens Friday. Best of luck to you. Thanks for calling in, sir. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Folks, are going to go to break. Back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights.
Tries to take away our rights. And again, not trying to be radical, that has nothing to do with it, but it is my God-given right to be able to defend myself, defend my property, and defend my family. And if we're not careful, what we do is we literally, we're our own worst enemies at times because we want to trust people that can't be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a simple, simple fact of it. If there was no worries about somebody breaking in my house, well, then I would not need a gun. But as we've seen since Genesis, that human nature, that Adamic nature, is always going to be to have to worry about other people.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think we should have to walk around in fear. But you know what? I had a guy ask me. I carry all the time, and everywhere I go. A guy asked me. He said, "Well, what are you scared of?" And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, not much."
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So I made a video. We want you to caption it. We made a video. Not going to get to the whole thing, but we want you to caption this at facebook.com/Conduit News. We want you to, what should the title of this video be when we put it on YouTube? This is Vice President Mike Pence juxtaposed with Governor Asa Hutchinson. Listen.
We speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So, Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leaders stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands.
And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them, and they're going to help you. Guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
All right, so feel free. I want you to, what do you think the title of that video montage should be? Obviously, you guys were, a lot of you were listening and not watching. But it's going to go up on YouTube at some point. So let me know what you think. What should it be? You can text 870-275-9799 or sound off on the Facebook page throughout the day. This broadcast will be available on Facebook all day long, and hopefully, as long as Facebook keeps it up there. Facebook.com/ConduitNews or to the YouTube channel. Click subscribe and the little bell to receive notifications. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow for Johnny Cash Friday, Arkansas. Be safe.